as the air. And if you're seeking freedom, seek it on the mountains. Got sunlight on your shoulders, the wind in your hair. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere.
Good morning. My name's Bryan. This is my wife, Carmenza, and it's our joy to be sharing Sunday service with you all today. This is a reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This is week 9, By Thinking Can We Arrive at Understanding? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. There are many places in the gospel where we see Jesus in open conflict with the Pharisees, that is to say, with man-made as opposed to true mystical tradition. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 15, we see a good example of how they are locked horns between Jesus and the Pharisees. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem came and asked Jesus, "Why do your disciples break our ancient tradition and eat their food without washing their hands properly first?" Jesus, after scolding them for their hypocrisy in observing lesser rules so carefully while ignoring the much more important ones, said, "Listen and understand this thoroughly. It is not what goes into a man's mouth that makes him common or unclean. It is what comes out of a man's mouth that makes him unclean." Now, it wasn't that Jesus counseled against such wholesome practices as washing one's hands before eating. In an age, however, when lesser rules were given too much importance relative to the truly important observances, cleansing the heart of impure desires, for example, he emphasized the supreme importance of loving God and of communing with him. The Pharisees, the orthodox religionists of his day, in other words, had brought true religion down to a level of intellectual hair-splitting. They mistakenly considered the way to understanding to lie through a minefield of definitions, which they tried to refine to ultimate exactitude. Jesus taught, however, that the intellect alone can never lead one to truth. Without love, indeed, there is no ultimate verity. Without fixity of purpose, born of the heart's devotion, the intellect wanders endlessly. It cannot settle long on anything. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 2nd chapter, the intellects of those who lack fixity of spiritual purpose are inconstant, their interests endlessly ramified. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. It was kind of cute. Every week we put in the newsletter what the Sunday service topic is, and there's a little picture of Carmenza and I, which we do every week. But then there's someone in a picture. They're going like this, by thinking, can I figure this out? And I think that's how we both felt. Can we think through this to get to somewhere? One of the contrasts here is between thinking and understanding, and it's kind of like the adage about knowledge and wisdom, where by thinking you can know that a tomato is a fruit, for example, but by understanding you know it's probably not a good idea to put tomato in a fruit salad. And so I want to talk about the deeper teaching here, of course, today, which Swami alludes to, but I first want to talk a little bit about our current context, because we're in a little bit higher age of consciousness than at the time that Jesus lived and that Jesus gave this teaching. I don't think that is to say that too many of us are feeling that washing our hands before eating or not is a matter of religious import. And so we are in an age that is sometimes called the energy age. For those of you familiar with the Yuga theories, it's the Dwapara Yuga, the age of energy. And so there's a few characteristics about our current age that that we need to consider that we do consider just by default of being born into this time. So one is an increased awareness of energy, and that's partly why we call it the energy age. The other aspect, a second aspect, is the awakening of the intellect. And so this age is sometimes referred to as the age of reason. You know, the 19th century, actually 18th century philosophers in Europe, Hume and Voltaire and all these folks really talked about the emergence of reason and how we can use reason. And reason's kind of champion is the scientific method. And I work in academics, and I teach in academics in a doctoral program. And reason, we call it clinical reasoning because it's a clinical doctorate that we're training people in. Reason is one of the things that we really try to develop, particularly we spend 9 months or so teaching our students how to interpret and critically appraise the literature that comes out around patient care. And we're particularly trying to get them to know what the true interpretation of the studies is. We look for bias. A lot of times we look for bias, and did this study, have certain bias that might affect the results. And we spent another 11 months or so with them, helping them to try to apply that research literature, or evidence as we call it, to patient care, to individual patients. And so this process is part of the manifestation of this current era's, awakening of the intellect, and it's sort of considered to be its purest form. I don't mean to suggest that academics doesn't have a lot of dogma. There is a lot of destructive and limiting dogma within academics, but in terms of research and interpreting research. And I notice a lot of times that there's conflicting information that people are trying to digest, particularly about health issues. People go to Dr. Google or Dr. TikTok and find out some piece of information. Recently, I heard the internet characterized as a weapon of mass distraction. And in this context, I'm thinking of it more as a weapon of mass distortion, because people who are reporting on evidence often don't have the skill set or the ability or the background to critically appraise that information. They just pass it along. And and the third aspect of the age that we're in, of Dwapara Yuga, is self-interest. And believe it or not, in the times of Jesus, people really didn't have much of a sense of themselves. They sense their community or their family or their tasks, but they didn't really have a strong drive, for the most part, to have interest in developing themselves. And so self-interest is really taking the awakened intellect or reason and distorting it. A lot of studies are biased because they're financed or done by people that want to have a certain result confirmed. I was reading recently, there was, almost everything you hear about, like, coffee is good for you, no, coffee's bad for you, this is a different study. Drinking red wine's good for you, no, this other study says drinking red wine. And it seems very confusing, and understandably so, because there is all this thinking that's going on that's influenced by self-interest. There was a study in England, this is in the mid-90s, in the UK, that came out in the public presentation as the results of this study show that a certain contraceptive pill doubled the rate of venous thromboembolism, which is a blood clot in your venous system. And everybody, a lot of people said, oh my gosh, we need to do something about this, and people went off that birth control. Within a few months, there was a huge spike in the UK of abortions. And so what was reported was actually true, because they reported what we call a risk ratio, or relative risk. The risk ratio was doubling, was 2 times the risk if you take this contraceptive pill. But we couldn't know whether that was important or not, because they didn't report on the absolute risk. We didn't know how important, because it's doubling of what? Well, it turns out that it was 1 in 7,000 people doubled to 2 in 7,000 people. So that's 0.0000143, doubling to 0.000, did I do 3 zeros? 246. In other words, less than 0.01% chance that you would have this thromboembolism, which is a concerning outcome. There's no question about it. But this is part of what gets reported a lot and affects our thinking. Now, the great saying that we hear a lot from Master and from Swami Kriyananda in our teachings is that reason follows feeling. And that is to say that people will tend to have a feeling about something and then want to attach reason or rationale to it. And we see this a lot in political forums, in everything from, about vaccines or vaccinations. People have a feeling about something. And the feeling actually arises, our feelings arise in our heart. Now, I had a hard time for a long time, and I still to a certain extent do. I always thought that the heart chakra, among all the chakras, was really a great thing. It was really positive. And it is. It has a positive manifestation. But, in fact, if you look it up, if you put what are the qualities of heart chakra, if you put it on Google, Dr. Google or not, it will say all these great things: love, compassion, courage is a big one. And those are true, but the heart chakra, just like every other chakra in our body, has a positive, uplifting, expansive aspect, but it also has a negative, downgoing, heavy, and contractive aspect. And when we talk, sometimes feelings are talked about as that rising energy, all the good aspects. And sometimes we talk about the downgoing, heavy ones, anger, jealousy from the heart, anger, jealousy, pride of pedigree. We talk about those sometimes as emotions. So sometimes that's helpful. If that's helpful for you, that's great. But this teaching, again, is talking about, it's interesting because Jesus doesn't say this well-known phrase that was quoted about, it's not what goes into a person's mouth that makes a difference, it's what comes out of it. He didn't say that to the Pharisees. He very seldom argued scriptural issues with the Pharisees. He did scold them about their hypocrisy, about ignoring a much higher law. But then when he went among his disciples, and that's when he said this phrase, when he went to his disciples and and the multitude, which is a group of people, I guess. I don't know how big this group of people was, but there were people who were listening. And, in every classroom situation, there's that helpful person who asks the dumb question that everybody else wants to ask, but they're too embarrassed to ask. And thank goodness for Peter, because Peter says, at this point, he says, can you explain this parable? And he gets a teeny bit of chiding from Jesus. Jesus is like, what, you still don't get this? He's basically saying, that whatever comes into your body, whatever comes to you from outside of your consciousness cannot affect your consciousness. I mean, he specifically says, you take in food, you digest it, and it passes out of you. It doesn't affect your soul. It may not affect your body even, or it may have some effect on your body. But your soul is essentially not involved in that. And so that's why he's saying what comes out of what you're thinking, what comes out of the downward aspects from the heart, which comes out of emotion, if you will, that's really what can make you unclean. And he talks about thoughts that you have, not just actions, but thoughts. So I'm sure nobody in this room is a murderer, but I'm also sure that probably all of us have had murderous thoughts at one time or another. And he's saying that the thought, as well as the action, is potentially problematic. And so this teaching is so much about our purification of our heart, our upliftment of our heart, like we didn't do in the purification ceremony every Sunday morning. There's this aspect of, I brought a little show and tell because I wanted to kind of give a pitch for the arts right now, visual arts. In this case, this is a painting that I'm referring to, and I know you can't see it. I guess maybe on the camera you could see it. I recently was made aware of this painting by William Holman Hunt, who is a British painter, and he was what they call the pre-Raphaelite painting school. And this painting was painted by him over a 3-year period, actually, in about 1850 to 53. And it's a depiction of Christ nominally referring to the passage in the Bible where Christ knocks on the door to enter your home, and those who let you in, he'll eat with you and he'll commune with you. But it's a very interesting image because the door that he's knocking on, which is sort of the door to us, our inner soul, the door that he's knocking on, it's kind of ambiguous. His hand is up here like it's knocking, but it's also, the hand is held as if it were to grasp a handle, a door handle. But there is no handle on the door. So the first allegorical piece about this painting is that the door to the light is called, the painting's called The Light of the World, the light of Christ. And Christ is holding a lantern. He's coming to this doorway at dawn. And Holman actually went to the Holy Land twice because he wanted to get the landscape right about what the trees and stuff looked like in the Holy Land. And so the door can only be open from the inside. It's only from us that can open to the light. Even if God or the Christ is knocking, vigorously, Christ can't open that door. The other thing about it is that you'll see that the door has a lot of vines and weeds that are growing over it. It hasn't been opened for a long time, and it's difficult to open. And this reminds me so much of, and I'll either leave this up here afterwards, or you guys can take a closer look. But it reminds me so much of where we talk about, like in this affirmation, the heartstrings. So I have, again, had a hard time with this image of severing heartstrings, partly because kind of severing anything creeps me out a little bit, but but it helps me if I think of our heart like a hot air balloon, and it's tied down by ropes. And, releasing those ropes allows the heart or the balloon to actually rise. And this is part of what is depicted in this painting at this time, where it's actually a really good time for us to enjoy and be involved in the arts, all kinds of arts, music, theater, film. The Oscars are tonight, and visual arts too, just because of planetary alignments right now. It's a very nice time to experience our movement towards spirituality and towards God through the arts. So I will stop there. Thank you so much. God bless us all in our journeys to awaken ourselves and purify our hearts.
Hello, great souls. This reading was very amazing to me because there's so many little parts to it, and it gave me a lot of food for thought and a lot of food for my meditation. Krishna tells us that without fixity of spiritual purpose, our mind just wanders everywhere. And that's what our mind does, it just wanders and wanders. If we don't focus our mind towards God, we can't get our intellect to be able to figure out what truth is. So Jesus Christ says, our intellects would not lead us to the truth, that we need love to be able to help us understand the truth. And I hate to admit that, but I wondered about love. What about wisdom? My mind was still trying to figure out things with, the intellect. And so I took that into meditation. What do you mean love? And then I understood that the foundation of our universe is love. That God's love is what sustains us. That our intellect can reason or can see things through our senses. What you see is what you get. Like the saying says, and our culture values the intellect so much, critical thinking, and it's good for, what Bryan was explaining in that mode of dealing with our senses. And yet, Master tells us a different story. We are beings of light, of love, of energy. That what he saw in us, because he didn't see us through our senses, he saw the connection with God through his spiritual eye, he saw us as beings of light. He would always just marvel and tell us, if you could only see what I see. This reminded me of a story from my own life. When I became a minister, the thought of standing up here talking terrified me. I was like, there is no way I can do something like that. And I think it was always because the idea of thinking myself through the teachings and what would be the right thing to say was like, there is no way I can figure that out. I mean, how? And, people suggested take, how to talk lessons and, and I did, and that scared me even more, because I had to think through things about all the things, the props that they gave me, and it was always like, how am I supposed to do this just with my mind? It was just like, no, I can't. It's too scary. And then, and I told some of this story when I gave my first talk. Last summer during Spiritual Renewal Week, they talked a lot about Master's first talk in the ship that brought him to America. And he stood there for 8 minutes waiting for something to come out. And I'm like, yep, I understand that. And I never meditated on what happened next. I always just focus on nothing coming out, And what he did was he went inward and he called on his master. Help me. You got to do this for me because, and then Sri Yukteswar, his master, said, speak. So the thing that happened, that was happening to me is that I wasn't asking Master with trust. I wasn't trusting Master that he was going to help me do this. I was like, I got to do this on my own. But I had to really go in and say, okay, Master, I need to trust you and I have to trust you. And the second thing that happened, because part of the fear was that I had to let Master in with my heart, his love, and I had to transmit that love to you, that I had to see all of you as my own, as my love, my extension, the extension of Master's love coming through me to everyone that hears me, that you are Master's, Master loves you, and I'm being a channel for that love. And then everything fell into place because the fear was like, you guys were going to say, what is she talking about? She doesn't know what she's saying. But when I make you my own, you are part of my love, then you are rooting for me. You are part of my family. You are part of, I'm here to share, and I listened when you have a chance to talk. And so that shifted everything for me. One of the other parts in this reading is that when Swami speaks of Jesus going up against the Pharisees, the thing that I thought was that Jesus as God was bumping up against us. And I was like, how does that happen? It's like we never hear of God being upset with us. And then taking that to meditation, we hear Master tells us that the earth cries because of what we're doing to the earth. He said that the Santa Ana winds in Southern California came about because of the war in Europe. And it's crying out for how we treat nature and how we treat each other. That the earth Mother Nature, part of God, part of us, then we never think of, we think that when we say something mean to each other, when we react, that we think is just between you and me. But every single energy that comes out negative, it affects all of us, it affects nature, all the natural disasters, cause and effect, it's like you put out, it comes back out to us. There's a story in the autobiography that I always remember this because Master talks about in the years with his master in the hermitage, a lot of people used to come to the ashram and talk to Sri Yukteswar and tell him stories, and they wanted to prove to him how much they knew and just talk. And then there was one time that there was a well-known pundit that came and was quoting all the scriptures and and then Sri Yukteswar says, "I'm waiting to hear you." And then Master says he's sitting in the corner just dying of laughter, because the guy was like, "What?" And then I love the way that he responded, and I got to read it because I don't think I can do credit. Sri Yukteswar said, "What original commentary can you supply from the uniqueness of your particular life? What holy text have you absorbed and made your own? In what ways have these timeless truths renovated your nature? Are you content to be a hollow Victrola, mechanically repeating the words of other men?" And that's the coming in and going out that, Jesus Christ was talking about. Are we're just repeating things and not really making them our own. One of the things that I thought and that David talked about in the Inner Renewal Week, and by the way, if you haven't heard those talk, I would recommend it highly. They were just marvelous and so much energy, so much light coming out of them. But Devi said something that she made it a point to pay attention to the reactive process. Because sometimes when we ask God for help, we already know what we want Him to say to us. We just want to just be able to say, "Oh, I think God help me. He wants me to do this." But our biases are there, and I started doing it, and it's like, "Oh no, I don't like that. Oh yeah. Oh no, a car goes in front of me. It's like always just reacting. Somebody says something to me, I don't like that. Oh, I like that praise. Oh no, I don't like this. Oh yes, I don't like this." And just to watch your reactive process. And Master says, take care of the minutes, and then the rest will take care of itself. The minutes of your reactive process. What are you liking and not liking every minute of your life? We always just reacting to, we like this and we like this. And then when we want God to help us, it's like, how is it going to be so clear if we already have all these likes and dislikes in our heart? It's not. You're like, help me. Oh, I think you want this. Okay. It's sort of like, no, you just got to practice to stop that reactive process so your heart can be clear, because your heart has to be clear in order for your mind to be clear. The other thing that I thought to practice, when you meditate, bring to mind, to our hearts, your love for God. Just bring it into your heart and your consciousness. Bring it up to your spiritual eye and call unto Master for His love, and make your connection with your love to His love. And stay in that feeling as much as you can, as many often as you can. And then you we'll begin to be able to not say prayers just repeating. You know, we sometimes just repeat prayers, read stuff, listen to music and just listen. But if you listen with love, you will get a different experience. There was a couple of weeks ago that there was a reading that it stayed on my mind, and because it's a declaration of Krishna, which was he's one with God and he left this for eternity for us to know. And his declaration to love for us. And he says, precious thou art to me, right well beloved. Listen, I tell thee for thy comfort this. Give me thy heart, adore me, serve me, cling in faith and love and reverence to me. So shalt thou come to me, I promise true, for thou art sweet to me. Fly to me alone, make me thy single refuge. I will free thy soul from all its sins. Be of good cheer. Peace.